Hey guys, we're hanging out in Denver, Colorado at Electric Bike Outfitters headquarters, and it's really a cool experience because the last time I met Jason, who runs this company, he met me in Fort Collins just with the bikes. But now that I'm on location, I've done some office tours, I've gotten to see some of the different just cool creations that he and some of his customers have made, and then I've got access to the parts here separate from the bike and even opened up, as you can see with that hub motor over here. So this kit is the EBO 36V or Volt Burly, and he says he calls it the Burly because the bike and the system are just really tough when they're combined like this. Like, you've got a battery that's Downtube mounted, really well balanced. He says the case here, this is a Dolphin case, it tends to be very tough, kind of rugged. I like that it just keeps it, again, the weight is low and centered on the frame like that. And then the motor here, this is one of the more popular ones. It's efficient. It's 350 watts nominal, up to, like 500-ish peak, 20-ish Newton meters of torque. So it's not like super high, but this is also relatively lightweight. So the battery is about 6.9 pounds, and then the motor's almost 6 pounds, right? So it's like, yeah, you're adding 12 pounds of weight, maybe 13 to the frame when you add in the nice display and everything. It's really cool to be able to transform a bicycle like this that might have been a little bit more affordable. It's got mechanical brakes. These are V brakes in the front, a decent suspension. It's a bit of an older bike, and you can turn it into an electric assist bike, so you can go a little bit further without breaking the bank. The price on this is $1,112, so kind of a fun price point. Kits are interesting because there's a little bit of DIY going on. There's some additional wires and clutter that can happen. But this is a nicer kit. It does have brake levers, these 5-star levers from Wuxing with motor inhibitors. So when you pull the brakes, it actually sends a signal to cut power to that motor. So it won't carry you away. And again, this isn't like the most powerful motor anyway, but it's just nice that they've taken those extra steps. They're color-coded, water-resistant connectors, just nicer stuff all around. It has been improved a little bit over the years. I even noticed that there's a USB charging port on the side of the battery, but Jason said we actually disabled that because, we found that it draws a little bit of power slowly over time, and they actually have another USB Type A port right here on the side of the display, which is, I think, a better place to have it because you can mount your phone up here or your MP3 player or something without having a wire running up the frame, or without, you can imagine, pedaling your leg and your shoe or passing right by that USB port. I also like that the charging port for the battery is up high and out of the way of the crank arm, so if you're charging it and you move the mic, it's not going to get snagged quite as easily. You can charge this battery on or off the bike. It's pretty decent, like in terms of capacity, 36 volts, 11 amp hours, like 396 watt hours. That's kind of standard. It's a little bit above average actually. For what I see, I would call like 350 watt hours average. So a little bit higher capacity. There's a fuse built into this battery pack. This is what it looks like off the frame. So it either locks securely, or you can pull it off and take it into the office with you. It's got like a locking core on the side and then that on-off button. That's one of the areas where there's a bit of a trade-off. You do have to turn the battery on before you can actually mess with the display. And maybe that's cool. It's like kind of a security backup step so that if you leave this outside, someone just tries to mess with the display without turning it on. So you can see down here there's a little blue LED going on because it's been turned on. And now the display, I'm going to go ahead and hold the power button. It comes right to life. And it even lit up for a minute. By the way, if you're hearing the rumbling, we're right here by the train tracks. Kind of a fun urban environment, and we're gonna cruise around a little bit later. So anyway, if you wanna keep that backlighting constant, you just hold up on that arrow for a couple seconds, and then there we go, and you can actually see the little light icon. So to me, this is a pretty decent display. It swivels a little bit, but it's not one that's removable, so it could take some more damage at the rack and stuff. They have an optional LED display. It's black. It's just more compact, and it has a button pad built in, so it would be mounted off to the side. It doesn't have the USB charging option. I guess one of the big takeaways from Electric Bike Outfitters for me is that they go to extreme lengths to make sure that, like, if this will work for your bike. If you have a longer bicycle, or maybe you want to put this on a tandem or a trike or whatever, they can actually produce longer cables. With the motor here, you'll notice it has a black casing, but they can do a silver casing if you want. Thick 12-gauge spokes. The rim here, this is like a standard, 26-inch wheel size. But they go all the way down to 16 inches, which is like super small, maybe like a folding bike or something, a kid's bike. 20 inches, 24, 26, 27.5, 28, 29ers. They go all the way through, and then they have like silver or black rims. There's just a lot of customization that can happen. They even have a front wheel or a rear wheel option, and then they can support different cassette options too. So it's like 6-speed, 7-speed, 9-speed, single speed if you want. And I usually opt for a rear wheel design like this because your body weight tends to be back further and it gives you good traction. But they do have a front wheel option, and that could be nice. Like imagine a trike where you have 2 wheels in the back. You can put the motor up front, and then you've got that even source of like thrust going on or pull. The thing is, then the front wheel can spin out a little bit and you add a little bit more weight for steering. But at almost 6 pounds, like it's really not, it's not that heavy. So, there is that sort of compromise. And then again, just looking at this 12-gauge spoke versus this is probably like a 14-gauge spoke, more standard up front. So it's definitely, it's built right. And they actually spoke these in-house, like right here in this building, because they do it sort of custom to order. And they even test their batteries. They like completely drain it and just make sure that you're getting what you're paying for, because there is some failure rate when you have parts, components that are shipped over, in a lot of cases from China, like this stuff here. So over time, I've noticed that their kits have slowly improved. The quality of like the parts that they're using is a little bit nicer. 30-day, like kind of a money-back guarantee, and then a 1-year warranty. That's a big step up from a lot of what you see on like eBay or elsewhere if you're trying to get a super good deal on a kit. These guys have been around since 2015. That was the first time I reviewed their products. And, to me, that's a real strong sign of trust. So we talked about a lot of the specs over here, but I wanted to show you the charger. So this thing weighs like, 1.5 pounds, 2 amps, so it's fairly standard. It's just got the little, normal looking plug on that thing. Small enough that you can put it in a backpack, and then this does unplug, so try not to lose that, but it also makes it a little bit more compact. We talked about the battery earlier, and then this is the motor. Really cool to see it opened up like this. Just very compact. It's planetary geared, which means that there are these plastic gears, and I might even see if I can, there we go, look at that. So you can see on the bottom here with the grease, the planetary meaning that we have those 3 gears that cycle around that centerpiece. And then, there we go, set it back in there. On this side, you can see the copper winding with the electromagnets passing by the rare earth magnets that are lined along the outside. Okay, so one of the things that's neat about geared hub motors is that they give you a little bit more torque, they tend to be lightweight, and they sort of freewheel, so there's no cogging because this outer casing can just spin freely. So they're very efficient that way. And I just, again, as someone who's a more active rider myself, I like how small they are and how kind of zippy they feel, but they don't get in the way of normal riding. And I believe this is kind of a 12mm threaded axle with like a 10mm cut, so it can just stick right in on the fork or in the rear. And one of the things that I've noticed about the design on these hub motors is that they've actually been customized. Let me come back here and see if I can see it. You can see that it's really angled in here and even kind of stepped in a little bit so that it can fit with plenty of clearance, especially on the rear dropout. But even on the front dropout, a lot of times you'll have like a really wide hub spacing, but then there's the it kind of bulges in where the fork is right here. Sometimes what happens, there's the end of the train. What I've noticed is that sometimes you get a kit like this and you try to put it on like a road bike with the narrower fork, and you get some rub, like the side of the hub casing will rub on the aluminum alloy usually, or maybe steel fork arms, and it's just, it's tough. Like I remember that happening a long time ago on some of the cheaper kits that I'd seen, and I was like trying to do it on my own bikes, and it's like I had to file like the dropout space, the width, like where the motor fits in, basically the part of your fork that this interfaces with. So I had to file that to get it to fit, and then it was actually rubbing on the fork, and I was just like, whatever, and I just let it rub, but it's not very satisfying. So Jason, founder of this company, he's actually custom designing the hub motors. So the casing and stuff is actually a little bit narrower, and it seems to work better. So for me, that's another reason that this is a little bit nicer. You know, some of the trade-off with kits that we already talked about was a little bit of clutter, a little bit of do-it-yourself, just not quite as beautiful with a battery that's like bolted onto the side of your bike. But they also do have a rear rack, which could potentially work with this frame. And then you've got the weight's high and it's back towards the rear, but then you can use that rack for like panniers or a bag, and you free up the center of your frame for having a bottle again. Because right here, you know, you kind of taking up that space with the battery pack. So I think that's it. I'm trying to be really thorough and present what I feel are the unique aspects of Electric Bike Outfitters compared to, you know, other e-bike kit brands. And now I might just jump in and turn the display back on. So I think it timed out. We hold the power button for a second again. That button pad's, you know, relatively close within reach. You'll notice that there are 3 speeds over here on the left and then 8 on the right. So this is 24-speed bike. That's not something you see a lot. And a lot of times in the world of e-bikes, you have a 1x, so like 1x10 or something. In this case, we have a really healthy, like wide range of gears, but I might be worried about like my pants snagging a little bit. And, you know, it comes back to the platform. This is just one example of kind of almost feels like infinite possibilities. I'm going to turn the backlighting on again. I believe if you want, you can hold the down arrow and that would activate walk mode. And if you hold up and down, you can get into the settings. And you can actually dial in how precise, like how responsive this Cadence sensor is. So Jason's using an 8 magnet sensor. And I've seen everything from like 4, 5, 8, and 12. And usually I'm like, 12, that's great. You have like the most magnets. But 8 actually gives you pretty good sensitivity, and you can dial in how responsive it is using those settings I talked about. This display is one of the deeper displays, and when you go into those settings, there's just a lot of options, but sometimes it's confusing. You don't know like how do you change those options. So he's translated the manual into better English, because again, it's kind of like a Chinese part, and that's on the website too. So for me, just the years of experience and stuff really show through on that, and it's something I appreciate. So up at the top here, top left, we have a battery infographic. It has 5 bars, sort of, and that outside like design that shows the battery, that's actually a bar. However, it's not super great to fully discharge your battery, so you can kind of think of this as 20% increments, and if you get empty, if that battery looks empty, it's time to kind of like go and maybe charge it. Then we've got the light icon right there, because the backlighting is on, and then if I pull the brake levers, see how that little circle with the arrows into it, that's actually the motor inhibitors being activated by the brake levers. That's very cool. Timer, assist level 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's great. Like 5 steps, pretty good. The way that it comes by default, this bike is set up 20 miles per hour, and if you have a throttle, which it comes with, well, then it's class 2. If you don't install the throttle, it's class 1. So, you know, coming back to a mountain bike like this, if I wanted to ride on trails and stuff, I might leave the throttle off, because then I could qualify as class 1. Also, the throttle, if you do plug it in, it overrides 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 with full power. So I like that in a city environment, because I might be cruising along, have to stop at a traffic signal, stop sign, and then I like a little bit of help getting going, so I could use the throttle, and then I can ease off and then go back to pedal assist the whole time. So it works pretty well. We've got speed in miles per hour. It could be switched to kilometers per hour. And then also, if I press that power button again, it goes to average speed and max speed. So 32.7 miles per hour. Someone was really going on this thing. And then over here we have motor wattage, or we can change it to motor temperature, like in Fahrenheit or Celsius, distance, and then we also have an odometer and a voltage meter, and that's something else that can be explored by pressing that power button again. So it sort of cycles through a bunch of different menus, all with that center button. So it's pretty simple, but very deep. And then we have the ambient temperature, so it's 66 degrees Fahrenheit outside. That might be it. And in this case, the throttle's on the right-hand side, which I sort of prefer personally. Still relatively reachable, even with these grip twisters. Sometimes if you have trigger shifters, it might have to be even further over. So this is a really optimized setup, and I think it looks nice, it's well balanced, and for just over $1,000 bucks, it's like, not bad. You know, you get a decent experience. I'm gonna hop on this thing, take it down to assist level 1 just to start with. Just barely hear it, just super quiet, really smooth at that first level of assist. Again, I think you can change the top speed on this if you go into the settings. I'm gonna go up to level 5. There we go. Very nice. Got the suspension. Hey guys, so we're looking down at the EBO 36V Burly. I'm just gonna ride along, pedal assist level 5, and do some start, stop, and then maybe a little bit of throttle action, just to give you some idea of the noise. You're mounted to the seat post, so there might be some vibration and stuff, but it's relatively quiet. Nice. One of the things that I really appreciate about hub motors compared to mid drives is that it really doesn't interfere with your shifting or anything, right? Like, I'm not going to be mashing gears or straining the chain, the derailleur quite as much. Now, this isn't necessarily as efficient as a mid drive where shifting gears empowers the motor. This just sort of has like an optimal operating speed, and then everything else is like, nah, it's okay. But it feels zippy, it feels smooth, it's relatively quiet. It's lightweight. I'm gonna do this. There we go. Yeah, not bad. I can definitely hear it more now that the power's turned up, but I think he's designed it not to be too jerky. Like, I definitely feel a smooth ramp of power, even though it's definitely there. It's smoother. Let's see, this time I'm gonna use the throttle. Very nice, very nice. Yeah, it's pretty satisfying. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of hills or anything around here, but I might be able to go off on that dirt area where the railroad track is. Not bad. You know, everything seems pretty quiet. This bike doesn't have any fenders or anything that are gonna rattle around and fall off, but I actually think it might accept fenders and a rack if I wanted to. So that's the beauty of kits. You know, you come in a little bit more affordable if you already have a bike, and maybe you have a bike that's just so custom that they don't really have an electric bike version of it yet, or just something that has sentimental value, something that's special. I definitely feel like these kits are doing a good job. There are some compromises with clutter and some of that other stuff, but it feels like they're keeping up with the latest technology in a way that I really appreciate. And I think I might take you inside now just to show you that other LED display and maybe introduce you to Jason real quick. There we go. So I'm gonna hop off this thing. I'm gonna make sure I turn it off, especially with the throttle. You don't want to accidentally bump it when you're getting on and off and have the bike take off on you, so that's a good safety. Oh, and then another thing, you can see that the cables down here, there is a quick disconnect point, and he's actually used the rack bosses to secure this little cable holder, keep it out of the way. But if the bike tips over to the right, like your derailleur's a little vulnerable and the power cable's a little bit vulnerable. So that's something with hub motors. You don't want to snag that and get it bent or something, because then your hub motor won't work anymore, you know, if it's kind of sheared off. And I believe the controller is in that lower plastic part of the dock where the battery slides on. Then another kind of a trade-off here is that this is probably mounted in 2 points where you have bottle cage bosses, so that's sort of a requirement. And it feels pretty sturdy, but it's not quite as sturdy as like multiple points or maybe even built right into the tubing. This is not a purpose-built electric bike. It's a conversion, so you do have some compromises. Although it looks like there's a nice gusset here, this looks like a sturdier bike, and with the rear-mounted hub motor and only being, you know, under 6 pounds, it's just not quite as difficult and rigorous on that. Hey guys, I was looking for that LED display panel. Do you know the one I'm talking about? Like the black one? I wanted to show that because that's an option.
Yeah.
Let's check that out. So this is Jason, by the way. Here it is. There it is. So this is one of your options for people who live maybe in like a city and you just don't want to have it attracting as much attention. But then again, you don't have the USB charging port, which is really cool. For comparison, here's their this is the Clydesdale. This is a gearless hub motor. So it's a lot bigger. It's heavier. It does have some cogging. It doesn't freewheel. Those are some of the trade-offs, but that one is a little bit more powerful. And then this bike, you can see the forks that I was talking about where it's sort of a little bit tighter. And that's why their motors are specifically designed. The casing is designed to let it fit. And you can see another one installed right there in the back. So, yep, this is the workshop. We've got a spoking kind of setup over here where they're building some of the wheels. You can see like a silver casing and then all the different parts and stuff that they offer. There's the 8 magnet sensor. I think that's it. Gone a little bit long, but it's fun to show off this stuff and just give you some insight of like who you're dealing with and what you're getting. For the full write-up on this, I'll see you back at ElectricBikeReview.com. Of course, have fun out there and ride safe.